Every state has a few towns that everyone quietly agrees to avoid. Florida has a whole list of them, and if you spend any time reading the rankings, the same names surface again and again. The most dangerous, the poorest, the places locals warn you about and real estate agents gently steer you around. The towns, frankly, that the rest of Florida seems to hate. But here is the question almost nobody stops to ask, and it is the only one that actually matters. Why? Because these towns did not start out this way, and they are not hated because the people in them are bad. I want to be crystal clear about that before we go one single step further. Real families live in every one of these places. Good people, working people, people who love their hometown fiercely. This is not a video that looks down on them. It is a video that asks how 11 Florida towns ended up on every worst places list in the state. And the answer, it turns out, is one single thing done to all of them by the same force. Because while an enormous part of Florida boomed over the last few decades, getting richer, more crowded, and far more expensive, that boom did not reach everyone. It flowed to the coast, to the theme parks, to the gated golf communities, and it flowed straight past a specific set of towns as though they were not even on the map. What got left behind is exactly what you see on those rankings: the crime, the poverty, the boarded-up storefronts on Main Street. Those are not the disease, they are the symptom. And the disease has a name. It is economic abandonment. Today, I am counting down the 11 most hated towns in Florida from 11 down to 1 using the real numbers, the Census Bureau's poverty data, and the state's own crime figures, not some clickbait blog. I'm going to show you exactly what the boom drove past in each one. And number 2 is genuinely going to stop you because it sits inside one of the richest counties in the entire United States. Let us get into it. 2 quick ground rules first, because this topic is a minefield and I want every word of this to hold up. Rule 1, I only included real towns with at least 10,000 residents because crime rates in tiny places of 2,000 or 3,000 people swing around wildly and prove nothing. Rule 2, I left the college towns out entirely. A place like Gainesville looks poor on paper only because it is packed with students who have no income yet, and that is a statistical illusion, not real distress. So no student towns, no micro towns, just real Florida communities of real size. And one honest note on crime. Florida is in the middle of switching to a new national crime reporting system, so the very latest raw totals are patchy. That is why I'm anchoring this on the Census Bureau's poverty numbers, which are rock solid, and using the broad crime pattern, which every source agrees on, as the support. All right, from 11 to 1. Number 11 is Daytona Beach, and I'm starting here on purpose, because it plants the idea that runs through this entire list. You think you know Daytona. The races, the spring break crowds, the famous hard-packed beach you can actually drive a car on. That is the postcard. But step off the beachside strip and cross into the mainland city itself, and the picture changes fast. Daytona Beach carries a crime rate higher than roughly 92% of communities in Florida, and large stretches of the mainland struggle with real, grinding poverty. The tourism money lands on the sand and mostly stays there. A few blocks inland, the boom never showed up. Daytona is the gentlest example on this whole list, but it teaches the core lesson early. In Florida, the gap between the glossy postcard and the neighborhood right behind it can be enormous. And it shows up in the money, too. The beachfront condos command real prices, while a mile inland, the typical home value drops sharply because 2 completely different economies are living inside the same city limits, and only one of them is thriving. You're about to see just how enormous that gap can get at number 2. Number 10 is Homestead, down at the southern tip of the mainland, the last real city, before the highway peels away toward the Keys. And that location is the entire story. For most people, Homestead is a gas station, a fruit stand, and a place to grab boiled peanuts on the way to Key Largo. Almost nobody treats it as a destination, and the local economy shows it plainly. Homestead carries crime rates higher than about 90% of Florida communities, and it never fully found its footing again after being flattened by Hurricane Andrew decades ago. On Zillow, the typical home here is worth well below the Florida average of around $392,000, which sounds like affordability until you understand the reason. It is cheap because the growth that enriched the rest of Miami-Dade mostly stepped over it. People drive through Homestead. The money mostly does too, taillights fading toward the islands. Number 9 is Lake Worth Beach in Palm Beach County, and this one shows the squeeze from a different direction. Lake Worth sits practically next door to some of the most expensive real estate in America, and that closeness, strangely, is part of its burden. As the wealthy areas around it grew unaffordable, the cost of living pressed down onto Lake Worth, which has long carried an elevated crime rate and a large share of residents fighting just to keep up. It is a town being slowly crushed between what it used to be and what its neighbors have become. Hold on to that picture. A poorer town wedged tight against enormous wealth, because it comes back with a vengeance at number 2. And notice the direction the pressure runs. It does not lift Lake Worth up to meet its rich neighbors. It pushes down. When the towns around you price out their own workers, those workers land somewhere, and the somewhere is a place like Lake Worth, absorbing the strain of everyone else's success without ever getting a share of it. Number 8 is Fort Pierce on the Treasure Coast. And Fort Pierce is a genuinely beautiful place carrying a genuinely hard reality. It sits right on the water, it has a historic downtown and a working marina, and by every right, it should have boomed like the coastal towns just to its south. It did not. Fort Pierce has wrestled for years with a serious drug trade, a violent crime rate well above the national average, and deep pockets of poverty, while the growth and the money flowed to the fancier addresses down in Palm Beach and Martin County. Same coastline, same ocean, completely different fortune. Fort Pierce is what it looks like when the boom passes within a few miles of a town and simply refuses to stop. And it is not for lack of raw material. Fort Pierce has an inlet, a beach, a marina, and history that many booming towns would envy. It has every ingredient except the one that actually mattered, which was somebody deciding to point the investment here instead of 10 miles down the road. That decision, made 1,000 quiet times over decades, is the whole difference between a Fort Pierce and the polished coastal towns its own residents drive to for work. And if this way of looking at these towns as places something was done to rather than places to sneer at is landing for you, tap the like button for me. It genuinely helps push the honest version of this out past the cruel versions, and that is the whole reason I make these. Number 7 is Panama City, up on the Panhandle, and this one carries a wound you can still see from the road. In 2018, one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to strike the United States made a direct landfall right here, and Panama City has never fully stood back up. Whole neighborhoods were damaged and never rebuilt, businesses closed and never reopened. On top of the storm scars, the city carries a crime rate and a poverty rate well above the state's, and the recovery money that poured in afterward was never quite enough to replace what was lost in a single afternoon. Panama City is a reminder that abandonment is not always slow. Sometimes one day does the damage, and then years of being left to fix it, mostly alone, finish the job. The wealthier beach communities nearby rebuilt fast because they had the insurance, the second homeowners, and the capital to bounce back. The working city inland did not have that cushion, so the same storm that was a setback for the beach was closer to a knockout for the mainland. That is the pattern in miniature. A disaster does not hit a rich town and a poor town equally. It hits them the same and then walks away, and only one of them has the resources to get back up. Number 6 is Lake City, up in the north of the state, at the crossroads where Interstate 75 meets Interstate 10. By the state's own crime data, Lake City has at times posted one of the very highest crime rates of any city in Florida, well over 1,500 incidents per 100,000 residents. And here is the cruel irony baked into it. Lake City is a crossroads. More people physically pass through it than through almost any town its size, tens of thousands of vehicles every single day. But passing through is not the same as investing, and all that traffic built a highway economy of quick fuel stops and budget motels rather than any lasting prosperity. Lake City sits and watches the entire state drive past it every day on the way to somewhere else. The traffic is enormous and the benefit is tiny, which is its own kind of insult. A town can be one of the busiest points in Florida and still be one of the poorest, because being on the way to prosperity is not the same as sharing in it. Number 5 is Cocoa on the Space Coast, and Cocoa is the first real double take on this list, so pay close attention because it is a preview of number 2. When most people hear the word Cocoa, they picture Cocoa Beach, the sunny, easygoing surf town with the famous pier. But Cocoa and Cocoa Beach are two completely different places, split apart by a river and a world of fortune. Cocoa Beach is the postcard. Cocoa, the mainland city, carries a violent crime rate above 1,000 incidents per 100,000 residents, among the highest in the state. Same name, same county, the same rockets lighting up the sky overhead. One town got the beach and the boom, the other got the crime rate and the name confusion, and it quietly absorbs the blame every time a tourist mixes the two up. If that surprised you even a little, brace yourself, because number 2 runs the exact same trick at 10 times the scale. And that is the question I want you holding for the rest of this countdown. How can two towns, side by side in the same county, breathing the same air, watching the same launches, end up worlds apart? Keep watching, because the answer is the entire point of this video, and number 2 makes it impossible to look away from. Number 4 is Opa-locka in Miami-Dade County, and Opa-locka is where the numbers stop being abstract and start to sting. More than 40% of the people who live here live below the poverty line, 40%. The median household earns barely over $20,000 a year, a small fraction of the state as a whole. The city has been through so much financial turmoil that the state government itself had to step in and take control of its finances. And it sits, once again, just a short drive from the glittering wealth of Greater Miami. Opa-locka has beautiful, genuinely one-of-a-kind historic architecture and a founding story unlike anywhere else in America. And it has been starved of investment for so long that the bones of the place are showing through the surface. This is not a town that failed. It is a town that was never handed the same chance the rest of the county got. And once a place falls far enough, the abandonment feeds itself. Businesses will not open where customers have no money. Families with options move out, taking the tax base with them. The schools strain, the services thin, and the next investor drives past for the same reason the last one did. That downward spiral is not a moral failing of the people living through it. It is basic economics set in motion by a starting decision to put the money somewhere else. And Opa-locka has been living inside that spiral for a very long time. Number 3 is Florida City, also in Miami-Dade, and this is where the crime numbers reach their peak on this list. Florida City posts one of the highest violent crime rates in the entire state, with well over 2,000 violent incidents per 100,000 residents, sitting alongside a poverty rate above 30%. Like Homestead just up the road, it is a gateway town, the very last stop before the long drive down to the Keys, and it has been treated like a doormat by the growth roaring past on either side. Drivers slow down for the outlet mall and speed right back up again. On Zillow, the typical home is worth a fraction of the state average, and Redfin's data shows homes here can sit a long while, because a low price in a struggling market is not the same thing as a bargain. And once again, the pattern holds without exception. A town this troubled is not troubled because of the people who live in it. It is troubled because, for decades, the money that built the rest of South Florida looked directly at Florida City and kept right on driving. And now, number 2, the one I promised would genuinely shock you, and here is exactly why. Riviera Beach. If that name does not immediately set off an alarm, that is precisely the point, because of where it sits. Riviera Beach is in Palm Beach County, one of the single wealthiest counties in the entire United States. It is minutes from Palm Beach itself, from oceanfront mansions and private clubs, and some of the most expensive homes in America. You could, quite literally, walk from billionaire money into Riviera Beach in a matter of minutes. And Riviera Beach has, at times, carried the highest murder rate in the entire state of Florida, running around 7 times the national average. Sit with that for a second, because it is genuinely staggering. In one of the richest counties in America, there sits a town with one of the deadliest crime rates in the state, the two separated by a bridge and a few hundred yards of water. That is the shock. Not that a poor town has crime, that is the sad and ordinary part. The shock is that this one exists in the direct shadow of that much wealth, and the wealth never once crossed the bridge. If you ever needed a single, unforgettable image of what economic abandonment actually means in the real world, it is Riviera Beach and Palm Beach staring at each other across the same narrow strip of water, living in 2 entirely different centuries. The boom did not miss Riviera Beach by some accident of geography. It got as physically close as it possibly could, looked across the water, and deliberately stopped. And figuring out exactly this, which Florida towns the money is flowing into and which ones it is quietly flowing around, is the whole reason the Florida Buy and Avoid list for 2026 exists. It lays out 40 Florida towns, 20 to buy and 20 to avoid, in one place, with the real economic picture checked on every single one. The link is sitting in the description right below this video. If you want the full map before you ever commit to anywhere, that is where it lives. And that brings us to number 1, the town that, more than any other in Florida, is the pure and complete picture of everything this video is about. Belle Glade. Out on the southern shore of Lake Okeechobee, in the far western reach of that very same wealthy Palm Beach County, sits a town where more than 40% of residents live below the poverty line, one of the highest rates anywhere in the state, on a median household income near $24,000 a year. Belle Glade is sugar country. For generations, its economy has run on the brutally hard labor of the cane fields, and when that labor mechanized and thinned out, almost nothing arrived to take its place. The coastal boom that turned Palm Beach County into one of the richest places in America happened 40 miles to the east, out on the ocean, and from Belle Glade, it might as well have happened on another planet. The town got none of it. And I want to end this one with respect, not a shake of the head, because Belle Glade has earned it. This is a place with fierce pride and deep, deep roots. It has sent an astonishing number of its young people to the National Football League, so many that the dark muck soil itself became legend, a tiny farming town producing professional athletes at a rate that entire big cities cannot come close to matching. The talent was always here. The heart was always here. What never arrived was the investment, the opportunity, the simple economic attention that the rest of the state took completely for granted. Belle Glade is number 1 not because it is the worst place to live, but because it is the single clearest proof of the entire argument. Put the poorest town in Florida inside one of the richest counties in America, 40 miles apart, and you are not looking at a coincidence or bad luck. You are looking at a choice, made over and over across decades, to let the boom drive right on past. And the distance is not just measured in miles, it is measured in daily life. A worker in Belle Glade and a homeowner in Palm Beach can look at the same lake, the same sky, the same state on their tax forms, and live in two economies that never actually touch. One side has some of the highest home values in the country. The other has some of the lowest household incomes in the state. Same county line drawn around both of them. That is what makes Belle Glade the perfect final answer to this whole video. It proves that the towns on this list were never random unlucky dots on a map. They are the exact places the money decided, again and again, that it did not need to go. Now, the part I truly need you to hear, because it matters more than any ranking on this list. Not one of these 11 towns is a lost cause, and not one of them is defined by its worst statistic. Crime in every single one of these places is concentrated, not everywhere, and the large majority of residents will live their whole lives never touching it. There are good streets, proud families, beautiful old buildings, and real history in all 11. Several of them are in the early stages of a genuine turnaround, and here is the thing worth remembering. A town the money abandoned on the way up can become a town the money rediscovers on the way back down. And that is exactly how yesterday's avoided neighborhood quietly becomes tomorrow's opportunity. You can actually watch the front edge of that on Zillow and Redfin, where investors and first-time buyers priced out of everywhere else are starting to circle the very towns nobody wanted 5 years ago, because the numbers finally make sense. I am not telling you to fear these places or to write them off. I am telling you the honest truth about how they got here, because the story the rankings tell that these towns are simply bad is a lie. They were not born troubled. They were left behind on purpose by a boom that had more than enough to go around and made a deliberate choice about where to spend it. So here is my question for you, and I read every single one of these. Do you live in or near one of these 11 towns? Tell me in the comments what you actually see on the ground, the parts the rankings get completely wrong, the signs of life the statistics miss, or the struggles that are honestly worse than any number can capture. Because the people living it always know more than the data ever will, and I genuinely want to hear it. And if this reframed the way you see the Florida map, the video you want next is the exact flip side of this story. The Florida towns quietly hitting brand new record highs right now, the places the money is pouring into instead of around. Watch those two back to back and you will understand the real economic map of this state better than almost anyone driving through it. Go watch that one next. And subscribe to Florida Pulse, because I track where this money moves every single month, town by town, and the line between the places being left behind and the places being lifted up is shifting right now, in real time, and I will show you exactly where it moves next. We will see you in the next one.